Good afternoon, everybody. We are going to start in just a couple minutes. We're just waiting for a few more investors log on. Right now, you're not able to hear anything, but you will in a couple minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon. Just wanted to let everybody know that this meeting is being recorded, and thank you very much for attending the Iroquois Valley's 2025 annual shareholders meeting. It's great to see so many of you have joined for our company update. This year, we are focused on how we can all help organic farmers in these uncertain times. Farmers are facing governmental funding cuts and freezes, and the future of any federal support is uncertain. Fortunately, because of our impact-driven shareholders, Iroquois Valley's business is strong. We are continuing our work supporting farmers with long-term land access and helping them transition to organic stewardship. Today, we'll hear first from Dr. Anna Jones-Crabtree, who will conduct the official business and share a few remarks. Anna will be followed by Chris Zuehlsdoff, our CEO, who will review the company's financial statements and strategic direction. A new team member, Nora Chovanec, will discuss the impact our farmers are making. And Dee Berlin, a board member and longtime investor in Iroquois Valley, is we'll provide an update on a new plan that Iroquois Valley is implementing to provide another benefit to our farmers. Finally, we'll save 15-20 minutes at the end for your questions. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation by typing them in the Q&A box. Please don't put your questions in the chat box because we won't be monitoring that during the meeting. Thank you again for attending, and I'll now pass the mic to Anna Jones-Crabtree.
Thanks, Donna. Nicole or Nora, did we want to screen share the agenda real quick on the welcome?
Yes, pulling up that new deck. 1 second, Anna.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. At least here in Montana, it's a beautiful, starting to feel like spring day. Here's our agenda, so you can see where we're going to navigate through today. And then I have some official business that we're going to do first before I give you a few thoughts from Anna. So let's jump into the official business here. Good afternoon, everybody. Our 2025 annual meeting of the stockholders of Iroquois Valley Farmland REIT, PBC, please come to order. I am Anna Jones-Crabtree, currently chairperson of the board of directors. On behalf of the entire Iroquois Valley team, I want to welcome you and express our deep thanks for your attendance at this meeting. In order to expedite the flow of business, we'll begin with the formal matters to be voted upon at this annual meeting. And after this formal portion of the meeting has been adjourned, several members of the Iroquois Valley team will present on various aspects of the company's strategic plan, business, and financials. Notice of this annual meeting was given to all stockholders of record as of the close of business of January 22, 2025. I'm happy to report that the preliminary report of Nicole Ferrer, our Inspector of Elections, is that more than 50.19% of the voting interest of shares outstanding and entitled to vote are present in person or by proxy at this meeting, thus constituting a quorum. Because we have a quorum, this meeting is declared open to proceed with business. We only have one item on the agenda, and that is the election of directors. So the board of directors favors the election of the following individuals as directors: Dorothy D. Berlin, Ingrid Dyatt, Dr. Steve Rivard, Olivia Watkins, and myself, Dr. Anna Jones-Crabtree. Ms. Berlin, Ms. Dyatt, and I are nominated to be elected to serve as directors of the company for 2-year terms that would expire in 2027. Dr. Rivard and Ms. Watkins are nominated to be elected to serve as directors of the company for 3-year terms that would expire in 2028. The board has not received any other nominations in a timely manner. Can I have a motion to close the nominations, please?
This is Chris Zuehlsdoff. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Chris. Do I have a second?
This is Dee Dee Berlin. I am seconding that motion.
Thank you. Our nominations are now closed, and there are no other agenda items that require a vote. So we'll now proceed to vote on the election of directors. If you've already submitted your proxy, no further action is needed unless you wish to change your vote. And thank you to everyone who have voted early. We are very pleased with the response to our online voting system this year. According to the preliminary report of our Inspector of Elections, each of the persons nominated to be a director of the company has been elected. So congratulations to you all. The Inspector of Elections will complete a final tabulation and certify election results following the close of business today. And final vote counts will be announced via a public filing with the SEC. All planned matters for this meeting have been completed, and there being no additional business to properly come before the meeting, the formal meeting is therefore adjourned. So before I hand the mic over to Chris for some of the guts of what happened last year, I have a few thoughts that I want to share with all of you wonderful humans. Nora, you can go ahead to the next slide just to hold for a bit. I just want to acknowledge it's been quite a journey since I last had the opportunity to visit with all of you in September of 23. Doug and I had a pretty good year last year on the farm, but I suspect where we sit here in this moment is that the biggest topic on all of our minds is the current impact of our governmental situation on our farmers. I'll tell you that every farm in our portfolio is very different, and we are working across Iroquois Valley to better understand the implications and trends of what those impacts look like across our farms. So I do want to share a few personal impacts of what's happening to Doug and I at Vilicus. We were really intentional and successful with grant applications across several USDA agencies over the last 18 months. We did this as a way to build our identity, preserve direct markets, and continue to increase our on-the-ground conservation activities. And frankly, when the notice came out about a freeze around grant funding, I was pretty shocked. Because when I went to add this all up for us at Vilicus, over the next 3 to 5 years, we were anticipating close to $700,000 for equipment, payroll, marketing, and conservation activities. I'm happy to let you know that the majority of this funding, although it was frozen, it is now moving. We've received a payment for our value-added producer grant last week. We got an advance payment for our on-farm grain cleaner, and a couple of our staff are actually driving to Great Falls as I say this to go pick that piece of equipment up. I think that Vilicus, we're unique in the Iroquois Valley portfolio with our high level of grant funding, and in general, we're not hearing about significant impacts related to grant funding in this moment from our portfolio farmers. However, we still need to stay very attuned to the long-term impacts of these actions that are being taken by this administration. We don't know the ripple effects of tariffs or changes in USDA budgets for things like crop insurance, conservation activities, and frankly, the USDA organic program itself. I believe that the organic cost share program, which helps to offset the cost of certification fees, has actually been removed. So these uncertainties are having implications to Doug and I and all of our farmers in our portfolio. And specifically to Doug and I, we're trying to finalize contracts for our 2025 crop. And we find that buyers are really unwilling to make any commitments for that because they are also in uncertainty. We're also anticipating significant cuts to organizations that are dependent upon USDA funding that provide all sorts of services to farmers, such as marketing assistance, financial training, and conservation implementation. I heard from a vegetable farmer that I know in Missouri, not in the Iroquois Valley portfolio, but some of her lower income buyers had actually had a contract for about $250,000 of produce to purchase from her, and that was completely removed just this last week. So I think that there's some ripple effects throughout our food system that we're going to need to all be paying attention to. Another area to watch is the level of staffing cuts and office closures across all USDA agencies. The cuts coming to agencies such as FSA and NRCS, the agencies that work directly with farmers, specifically farmers in our portfolio, are going to have significant impacts on our farmers as well as the rural communities that they're all situated in. Many of these local offices were already insufficiently staffed, and further erosion of this already understaffed USDA services is going to impact farmers, organic and otherwise, and really eliminate good paying jobs that negatively affect rural communities in which many of us live. The bottom line is that we're all in this together in this time of massive change and disruption. And you are all here because you care deeply about organic farming. And Iroquois Valley has been providing a solution for organic farmers for over 17 years. And we are going to continue to work despite our current challenges. Like I say, you can't build soil on quarterly profit reporting cycles. And Dave Miller, our co-founder, would like to say that there's no liquidity on a dead planet. So we all need to double down on our work to transform an agricultural system through organic land management. And that means thousands of more acres under organic production. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the ripple effects of our current change in government ripple out. Subsidy payments are a significant portion of a lot of farmers that use a system that's not organic. My husband Doug is just back from the National Farmers Union Conference, and there was a lot of discussion about what changes could happen in that. On a good note, many of the organic farmers were much less reliant on those subsidies, so I think there could be some shining light of resilience in there also. But I have a few more ideas to share with you. And what I feel that we're doing here at Iroquois Valley is really no less than a moonshot. It's an effort to raise up a different land stewardship system. Go ahead, Nora, next slide. Every farm in our portfolio is a microcosm of organic land management that's embedded in a much larger system of land management around them. As an example, in the middle of this picture are 2 Vilicus fields that are in the Iroquois Valley portfolio. Our farming system looks really different. We were an early adopter of prairie strips. Our 7-year crop rotations integrated with pollinator habitat, which also serves as a natural system of wind buffer and snow moisture catch. Our long-term lease arrangement with Iroquois Valley allows us to invest in the land the same way as we invest in our own land. And you can see that as compared to the field on the right, which is a field that Doug and I own. These fields that you see are part of the 1% of organic farmland in Montana. And this statistic is very much the same across the United States. Iroquois Valley is out to change this statistic. Go ahead, Nora. Here's a few pictures of what these fields look up close on the ground. Go ahead, next one. We have native plants. Well, this is an Iroquois Valley field, that's sandfoin. I think there's lentils on the right and a grain on the left. Go ahead, Nora, next one. And then what's been so fascinating to us about this investment in these strips is that we actually have plant species, original native plant species showing up in some of these buffer strips that were not in the original seed mix. You know, these zoomed in pictures of what's happening at the soil level of a farm is what we all truly love. And we all know that living systems are magic. But part of the challenge with living systems is there's a lot of dynamic change. Go ahead, Nora. So if you zoom back out with me now, not all Iroquois Valley farmers have the distinguishing prairie strips that we have at Vilicus, but they still are different than the farms that they're surrounded by. And while each Iroquois Valley farm in our portfolio provides a suite of important outcomes for all of us, food, healthy soil, habitat diversity, there's always a piece of education and human growth and learning connected with farms. But we are all subject to much larger forces beyond our control, be that local culture. Why are you farming organic? That's really different. Be it climate instability, drought, or flooding, or variable growing conditions. Ag policy, that's another big one. Capital markets, where do you sell your crops? These forces are much out of our control, and you can do things to try to manage through each and one of them individually, but at some point when they're all together, it can be overwhelming. So we just have to remember that each farm has these significant forces beyond them, and part of the magic of Iroquois Valley is we're learning how to buffer those. Go ahead, Nora, next slide. So the question is how do each one of our farmers, how do we know they have the support that they need to do the organic land management over the long term when we accept that, you know, we're really in a new reality. It's all variability all the time in all things. We can't use the past to predict the future, and we really have to reimagine together new long-term solutions in supporting farmers, because as I said before, building soil doesn't happen on quarterly profit reporting cycles. So Nora, go ahead, flip. So like our farmers who do things that don't have an immediate financial payoff, such as growing cover crops or integrating grazing, we have invested, as Chris likes to say, in moving from spreadsheets to systems at the company. And over the last year, we've made some massive investments into building the organizational soil that enables Iroquois Valley to really own our strategic plan of transforming agriculture through organic land management. The work that the staff and my fellow board members have accomplished over the last year and a half has been foundational and incredibly life-giving. We are so ready for more acres, more farmers, and we need more investments at 100 times the scale than we currently have. Go ahead, Nora. The need for agricultural transformation is even more urgent than it was at our last meeting when I talked to you in 2023. It's going to take all of us collaborating and sharing resources to make this transformation real. While it feels like many of the systems we all depend on are crashing, like, don't let yourself get drawn into scarcity. Organic farms at their heart are life-giving. Each farm is like a little organism itself that has a heartbeat that ripples out. Reciprocity and relationships are our only way forward. And my wish for all of you is that by the end of this meeting, each and every one of you is empowered and inspired to bring your unique contribution to transforming agriculture. So here's some ways to do that. Maybe you'll want to increase your investment in Iroquois Valley. Maybe you have a friend that you can convince to invest so that farmers have ongoing long-term access. Maybe you buy products from our farmers so they have a more stable market. Or maybe you know a farmer that you could bring into the Iroquois Valley portfolio. And here's another idea, and this is a little way out there, but maybe you go talk directly to a farmer and find out what they need, as one investor did for Doug and I and funded solar panels for us. Maybe you provide money for a grant match, or maybe you eliminate debt incurred due to some outstanding forces outside of their control so that that farmer can thrive over the long run. Go find your own unique way to dig in the dirt and cultivate life. That's what we're trying to do here at Iroquois Valley, and we're so happy that all of you are part of that mission. Finally, one last slide. I wouldn't be in this position if it had not been for Dave Miller. He's our co-founder and the original architect of our farmer-focused care team. And he also, I want to announce, is the first person to hold the title of Director Emeritus. So those of you that know Dave won't be surprised by this first. Dave has always been willing to try things that others wouldn't. And we're fortunate to have been led by Dave's innovation. And Dave's still out there for us if we need his expertise or just a good chat. So the value of innovation continues and lives on in Iroquois Valley. And I'm turning this over to Chris to share this awesome work that we've done on strategic planning and the work of our finances. So Chris, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Anna. Welcome, shareholders. Yeah, thank you, Anna, for touching on the big picture challenges facing farmers and the farm economy and what it feels like for you and Doug directly on Vilicus Farms. I also wanted to echo your comments and thank Dave Miller for his visionary leadership as he transitions to his Director Emeritus. I'm going to cover 3 topics today. Our strategic direction, I'm going to provide a financial update, and then also provide a brief portfolio update. Next slide, please, Nora. First, I wanted to do a little bit of Iroquois Valley by the numbers. We currently have an 8-person independent board of directors with 10 full-time employees. We have 126 million in total assets, which we're going to cover in detail a little bit more, but that's a new record for Iroquois Valley. We have 36,000 acres under management, and for the first time last year, broke through $5 million in annual revenue. Since inception in 2007, our annualized return has been 9%. On the right column is more focused on farmers and impact. We have 70 partners, farmer partners in our portfolio today. 100% of them are using cover crops. 67% of those farms are certified organic, with the other 33% going through transition. 62% of our investments are follow-on investments where we're doing more than one deal with our farmer partners. Looking through our portfolio, 66% of our portfolio is women-owned or women-involved, and about 9% of our portfolio is BIPOC-owned or BIPOC-involved farmers. Nora is going to cover some interesting work we've been doing on the impact side, but we've started looking at kind of pesticides avoided and pesticides removed, and we're thrilled to see over 8 million tons of synthetic chemicals eliminated since 2014. So next slide, please, Nora. In 2023, as Anna mentioned, we launched a new strategic plan with an ambitious vision to transform agriculture through organic land stewardship for the health of people, our communities, and the planet. What we quickly learned was that in order to transform agriculture, we had to transform Iroquois Valley into an organization capable of transforming agriculture, and to do it within a single generation. With what that meant, and you'll see as we go through this in the financial update as well, we made a significant investment in people, in process, and technology, and across all of the strategic capabilities that we identified in our strategic plan. We need to be successful in developing our marketing and communications capabilities, business development and investor relations, farmland investments, farmland acquisition, and farmer relations. We need state-of-the-art finance and operations, and we need to better articulate our impact to our stakeholders. There are new team members, better processes, and new systems for us to be more effective and efficient. It goes beyond that, though. We now have aligned goals and strategic purpose. You'll see that in the communication strategy that Nora is building, how we communicate with our external stakeholders. You'll see that in our 3-pronged fundraising strategy that Donna and her team are building around our core base of individual impact investors, RIAs, and wealth management platforms, along with mission-aligned institutions. The farmland investment team is refining our acquisition strategy to focus on building hubs of organic farms to create a higher concentration of farmers and build a positive network effect. We now have the operating platform and people that can achieve our vision of transforming agriculture. The message is loud and clear from our board and our stakeholders. We need to operate with a sense of urgency. With that, we've established 5 key strategic priorities for this year. Next slide, please, Nora. The first is to raise capital. We have a large pipeline of farmers looking for capital. Second is to support farmers. This is critical in the current environment, as Anna mentioned, and we've got 2 strategic partnerships I'm going to talk about here shortly to provide support and wraparound services to our farmers. Third, we want to establish transparent long-term financial targets around operating metrics, profitability targets, and dividend policy to make sure we're properly aligning all of our stakeholders' interests. Fourth, we're going to talk about the launch of our farmer success sharing plan to reward farmers for their long-term land stewardship. And lastly, is around impact and our ability to fully articulate our impact to stakeholders. I'll cover each of these now in a little bit more detail. Private patient capital is going to be the key to transforming agriculture. We successfully raised $15.3 million in 2024, and our goal this year is to raise $25 million by growing and diversifying our investor base. We added 78 investors for a total of over 850 unique investors. We have a big tent. We are unique in that we have investors from $10,000 to nearly $10 million and everything in between. We've democratized ownership of certified organic farmland. We will keep that focus as we grow, and grow we should to fund our pipeline of $45 million in new investment opportunities. I'll be excited when Nicole and Donna make that announcement that we've passed 1,000 unique investors in 2025, but we fully expect to achieve that goal. Next slide, please, Nora. There are 2 strategic alliances and partnerships that I want to highlight. The first is our existing alliance with Healing Soils Foundation. Healing Soils is led by Executive Director Sarah Franz, who joined last year, and she's quickly establishing Healing Soils as a robust and innovative support system for farmers working the land. There are currently 4 programs that Healing Soils operates. The newest one being the Regenerative Farmer Assurance Fund to provide critical financial relief to organic and regenerative farmers facing delays in public funding. 3 programs launched last year is Restore Midwest, Rebuild Midwest, and Land Access. I encourage anyone looking to support farmers directly with any philanthropic funds to check out the Healing Soils Foundation website. Next slide, please. Earlier this year, we announced an exciting new partnership with Rodale Institute. We will be working closely with Rodale's organic consulting team to identify farmers in our portfolio who will benefit from the type of technical assistance that Rodale is known for, support with organic transition, as well as broader business and market support. The goal of this partnership is to accelerate the transition of more certified organic acres. We're excited to kick this off with Rodale's organic consulting team this year. Next slide, please. Another priority in 2025 is to launch a farmer success sharing plan to better align interests. You'll hear Dee Dee discuss this in more detail, but the premise is simple. Once Iroquois Valley meets its financial objectives and targets, a profit sharing mechanism will kick in that rewards farmers with equity in Iroquois Valley. This creates a strong alignment of interests and is a big differentiator for us within the organic farming community. Congratulations to our Farmer Impact and Stewardship Committee for the thought leadership on this front. The last area of strategic focus I want to highlight is impact. Nora is going to cover this a bit later, but we are focused on articulating our impact to stakeholders in a more concrete way. We've identified 6 pillars of this work and expect to expand on this in the year ahead. I'm going to shift gears and provide a review of our financials. 2024 was a year of investment, both in the operating platform and for our farmland portfolio. Total assets reached an all-time high of $126 million, as did revenue, exceeding $5 million for the first time. Profitability was pressured by higher operating expenses and interest expense, ending the year at approximately a negative $128,000. I'll dig into each of these in more detail. Next slide, please, Nora. So looking at total assets, as I said, they ended the year at about 126 26 million. That's a 29% increase in total assets year over year. The bulk of that asset increase was driven by owned farmland. We had a 48% increase in owned farmland, approximately $30 million. This was driven by 16 new acquisitions during the calendar year. Since inception of becoming a real estate investment trust in 2016, total assets were about, I think, just under $30 million. We've seen about 18% compound annual growth in our asset portfolio. Next slide, please, Nora. Total revenue is up 12% in 2024 to $5.05 million. This is driven, by no surprise, by the increase in net rental income due to our higher owned farmland portfolio. That is the bottom blue bar there that you can see in the chart on the right. The overall mortgage interest income and line of credit interest income saw a small decrease in 2024. Revenue is also compounding at about 18% year over year. That's not a typo, but we've seen very consistent growth in both portfolio assets and revenue since inception. Next slide, please. Looking at our operating expenses, they were up 7% year over year to about $4 million. That's driven by a couple different factors. Employee expenses were lower year over year, but professional fees increased by about $500,000 due to the shift to our third-party fund accounting relationship, FTI Consulting. We had higher initiation fees and ongoing fees for that relationship. Some of those will be non-recurring, so we'll see those offset in years ahead. We also had higher legal and consulting fees, given our high level of acquisition activity and strategic kind of investment and development into the organization over the course of the year. One trend that we expect to see going forward is a kind of a flattening of our operating expense growth. There was a 19% kind of growth rate from 2016 to 2023. As I mentioned, last year was about 7%. And our goal going forward is to keep that operating expense flat or growing much slower than revenue growth in the years ahead. Next slide, please. Interest expense increased significantly to $1.4 million in 2024. This is the result of the growth in our balance sheet and our strategic decision to grow our asset portfolio and acquire some strategic parcels of farmland during the year. Our impact notes increased by about $7 million. We added some underlying mortgages on 2 specific strategic purchases in 2024. And we also used our line of credit as well as bridge financing, in addition to raising $8 million in new equity. So this increase in notes, mortgages, and our line of credit contributed to a higher interest expense as it supported our portfolio growth in 2024. We expect to moderate our asset growth this year, and we expect to see interest expense decline to more traditional levels of 15 to 20% of revenue in 2025. So as I mentioned, both operating expenses being a little bit higher and interest expense being higher than normal hit our net income. So next slide, please, Nora. Net income closed the year at a negative $128,000 for 2024. But as I mentioned, we expect to return to profitability in 2025, driven by some of the kind of key priorities we've set strategically for the organization and financially. Next slide, please, Nora. I just want to very quickly highlight total shareholder return. We're up 6.4% in 2024. Well, that's down from kind of above average returns over the prior 3 years. Still very strong performance. It was primarily driven by a moderation, I would say, of farmland values, kind of relative to the prior 3 years. Looking at our 5-year number, we're annualizing about 10%, and since inception, returns of about 9% since inception in 2007. This is a strong case that you can invest both for impact and strong financial returns. Next slide, please, Nora. I wanted to just look into the kind of risks directly to Iroquois Valley from some of the concerns around federal funding, but also highlight where we see some of the direct risks to farmers and indirect risk as well. The direct risk to Iroquois Valley is about $107,000. This is related to a final claim against our Conservation Innovation Grant, which expired at the end of 2024. This is less than 2% of revenue and not factored into our current budget expectations. There are direct risks to farmers across a number of direct grants. As Anna mentioned, whether it's EQIP, Value Added Producer Grant, Conservation Stewardship Program, CRP programs, et cetera. And so we're monitoring that very closely to see if there are any farmers that are materially impacted. The broader risk that's more indirect and hard to quantify includes cuts to a number of nonprofit organizations and other government-funded entities that provide service to farmers. I think the underlying word here for us and our farmers is uncertainty, and managing through that uncertainty this year. Next slide, please. So some quick targets for 2025. Our goal is to return to profitability. That means a positive net income. We want to pay a dividend yield north of 0.5% in 2025. That is above the 5-year average. And on our operating metrics, our targets are for flat year-over-year growth on the operating expenses and to reduce our interest expense to less than 20% of revenue. If we can achieve that, we'll achieve our goal of profitability and delivering that dividend yield to our investors, our shareholders. Next slide, please. So I'm going to wrap up my part of the presentation with a brief portfolio update. This next slide is familiar to many investors. And Anna talked about all of the diversity on her farm in north central Montana, both above the ground and below the ground, and how she's building resilience on her farm. And when you think about it from a portfolio perspective, we are trying to build that same type of resilience and diversity into our portfolio. So our portfolio is diversified by geography, by production type, and by farmer. That way we can withstand many unforeseen risks in one part of the country, one specific weather event, or with a specific farmer that may be struggling in a specific year. Our core remains in Illinois and Indiana, and that is where our hub approach is starting to gain momentum. We do have significant acreage in Montana and Arizona, as well as increasing acres in the Pacific Northwest as well. You'll see in the upper right chart there, 75% of our portfolio is focused on organic crop rotation, with a smaller mix in pastured livestock and diversified farm operations. There's some very small kind of legacy pastured dairy and produce operations, all in total, those are less than 5%. On a product basis, the long-term purchase leases that are supported by our own farmland are about 77% of the portfolio, and 21% of our portfolio is mortgage financing that we have with farmers, primarily in some of the anti-corporate farming states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Kansas, and places like that. Less than 1% of our portfolio is in operating lines of credit. Next slide, please. I referenced our pipeline earlier, and last year we closed about 21 deals, totaling about $31 million and 15,000 acres. We've closed about 3 deals so far this year, and you'll see on the bar on the right reflects the number of farmers reaching out to us looking for capital and land access. It's about $45 million. All of these opportunities obviously will not make it through underwriting and ultimately close and enter our portfolio, but it gives you a sense of the demand for our long-term partnership we offer organic farmers through transitioning more ground. Next slide, please, Nora. Just a couple quick deal highlights I want to touch on. First is Johnson Farms. We worked with Corey and Rick Johnson to purchase an additional 520 acres last year, and three new farms we added to our portfolio. So Corey and his dad now lease about 940 acres from Iroquois Valley. 420 of those acres are already organic, and these new 520 are now going through transition. So we're very quickly establishing a very strong hub in Will County, Illinois. Another opportunity relationship I want to highlight is with Tyler Tyndall of Tyndall Organics. We did a large purchase with him in DeKalb County, Illinois. This is a great example of mentorship that's very common in the organic community. Tyler has worked closely with another successful Iroquois Valley farmer in our portfolio, Jeff Anderson, and we're thrilled to allow and support Tyler in this purchase as he's going to begin stewarding for Iroquois Valley. The last one on the list is with Cindy Toll, Diamond E Ranch. This is a new deal from last fall. It's an 11,000 acre ranch in Cochise County, Arizona, that we financed in partnership with Dirt Capital. Cindy is restoring the landscape with Criollo cattle, a breed that was brought over in the, I believe, 14 or 1500s, and is kind of well adapted to grazing in that kind of high steppe, high desert climate. This is a very ecologically and important project, and we're excited to partner with Cindy and Dirt Capital on this work. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Nora.
Hi, everyone. I'm starting my video. Oop. Oh, Nicole, could you start my video for me? I think as the host. There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Nora Chovanec, and I am the new VP of Marketing and Communications at Iroquois Valley. I joined the team last May, and I'm really excited to talk to you all today about our impact pillars. So with that, our impact pillars were developed by the Farm Impact and Sustainability Committee, which is a committee of the board where members of the board are partnered with staff members on key subject matter areas. The purpose of this committee is to be responsible for reviewing and making recommendations to the full board regarding our portfolio of farm investments, ensuring alignment with the mission of our company. So this includes review of acquisitions, lending, and pipeline development, as well as overall portfolio review, impact measurement, and reporting. This is all with the goal of supporting the long-term success of our farms and our farmers, while providing investors with relevant information on our impact and performance. We think it's really important to share that the vision that guides this committee and what really underscores the work is that we believe that transforming agricultural systems towards organic practices is financially attractive for farmers and investors alike, and supports healthier people, communities, and the world at large. So with that, I'll talk a bit about our impact pillars. This is specifically 6 pillars of impact where we at Iroquois Valley feel we can drive positive change as we work to effectively transition thousands of acres of formerly conventional farmland to organic stewardship. We see these pillars as all being interconnected, that healthy soil leads to increased biodiversity, carbon sequestration, and clean water. This is the foundation for environmental and human health. So with that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we approach each of these pillars, and then I'm going to talk to you a bit more specifically about one of them. So first off, carbon. We all know that the climate is warming and that conventional agriculture drives significant CO2 emissions. But we also know that organic agriculture not only emits less, but has the potential to actively sequester carbon. Currently, we're using USDA-approved metrics, and with our partners, the Rodale Institute, their study data to calculate how much carbon is sequestered in the soil of our collective portfolio. Next, we want to talk about soil erosion. Soil erosion and compaction leads to less nutrient-dense farms and creates pollution in our waterways. Organic farming practices such as cover cropping and reduced tillage increase soil health, organic matter, and crop yields. When it comes to farmer economics, we know that conventional farmers are often losing money and often have to rely on the government subsidies that we've been talking a lot about today. And conventional farmers rarely survive without off-farm work, meaning a job in addition to the farm. Organic farmers, on the other hand, get paid a premium for their crops after that organic transition. So on average, the 10-year returns are $479 an acre for organic farms relative to $249 an acre for conventional farmland. And we really see that consumer demand is growing year over year for organic products. Next, we want to talk about biodiversity. We know that conventional farms see sharp biodiversity decline, but organic farms, thanks to things like what Anna talked about, like prairie strips on her land, they see an increase in total biodiversity by 30% and pollinator diversity on average by 50%. When it comes to water, due to soil erosion and synthetic chemicals, conventional agriculture creates pollution in our waterways. But organic farming practices absorb twice the amount of water, build drought resiliency, and have 30% less soil erosion. And lastly, when it comes to pesticides and herbicides, organic farming does not allow for any synthetic chemicals, effectively removing massive amounts of these toxic chemicals from our soil, water, air, and food systems. And we want to dig in a little bit more about the pesticides and herbicide impact that our farmers are having. So on each of these pillars, our team is developing informational decks to help outline the landscape of this particular issue, what the problems are, what the challenges are, what the solutions can be, and specifically how Iroquois Valley is a player in those solutions. So we're using open source research to outline the problems in this system, how organic can be the solution, and then calculate how our portfolio's expected current impact is. In a bit, we hope to do more around developing a comprehensive approach to measuring impacts directly in partnership with some of our farmers. So in thinking about the landscape of pesticides and herbicides in this country, we know that U.S. farming is really dependent on chemicals. There's 2 million U.S. farms, and 98% of them are conventional. We also know that the most heavily sprayed crops, 80% of them are corn, soy, potatoes, cotton, and wheat, which means that our row crop farmers who are organic have the potential to really reduce the amount of pesticides at scale. Thinking more specifically, the most heavily sprayed herbicide is called glyphosate. Most people know it as Roundup, and it is applied at 280 million pounds annually. That is a lot of glyphosate going into our soil, into our waterways, into our communities. And so we know that that is a really big problem. What exactly is the problem? Well, pesticides and herbicides and fungicides are very toxic. We know that exposure is harmful for farmers, for workers, for communities. There have been many peer-reviewed studies that link things like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and leukemia when people are exposed to these chemicals. That different types of cancers are linked to high and prolonged exposure, and that rural communities are frequently, when they are exposed, linked to negative health outcomes. We also know that these pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides are very prevalent in the environment. They're found in 80% of the waterways near farms. Nearly half of the conventional food shows detectable pesticide residue. They are broadly linked to bee declines. And we still in the United States use a lot of pesticides that are banned in other countries. I'm going to get into that a little bit on the next slide. And specifically talking about glyphosate, Roundup, one that we all know is that it has been linked directly to cancer. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research has shown that glyphosate is on a list of probable carcinogens. Bayer has spent $10 billion on lawsuits connected to glyphosate, and it is now banned in 10 countries around the world, including Mexico and Germany. But the chemical industry has funded many, many studies, resulting in a lack of studies in the United States to be able to showcase independent research on this front in our own country where so much glyphosate is sprayed. As I mentioned, the US sprays so many different pesticides that are banned around the world. We think this chart is a really stark example that shows in countries like the EU or in places like the EU and all of the countries within it, along with Brazil and China, there are many pesticides that their citizens are not being exposed to that we in the United States are. But laying out this problem and understanding that this is a major issue, we want to think about solutions in regards to our farmers and in organic farming, and specifically, organic farming does not allow for the use of synthetic chemicals. So once our farmers go through that transition, that 3-year transition period, there's been so much regeneration in the soil, there's been so much less sprayed, and then ongoing, once they're certified, none of these chemicals are sprayed indefinitely. So we know that there is a dramatic reduction in the risk of cancer, according to the American Medical Association, correlated with eating organic pesticide-free food. And Iroquois Valley is a part of that solution as well. So we are really proud to state that since 2014, Iroquois Valley farmers have eliminated 8.2 million pounds of synthetic chemicals from the food system. So from the wheat farmers in our portfolio, that's 1.4 million pounds. From the corn farmers in our portfolio, that's 4.7 million pounds. And from our soybean farms, that's 2.1 million pounds. So this deck that I've shared some highlights with you specifically around pesticides, we're working on building these out for all of the pillars that I talked about at the top. The FIS committee that I mentioned is going to be working with how we can track this more deeply with our farmers while also not being a burden to them. And we want you all to know, as our valued investors, that in the spring of last year, when I joined, I worked with the investor relations team to run a survey to understand what impact pillars were most important to our community of investors. This work by the FIS committee was influenced by those results that you all shared with us and the impact that you want to hear and understand our farmers are making. So we implore you to please continue sharing with us what you would like to understand in regards to impact. If you're interested in receiving this deck about pesticides or about some of our other pillars, please reach out, because we would be more than happy to share more of this information with you all. And we appreciate your continued engagement with the incredible impact that your investor dollars are doing to support our farmers to be influencing these 6 impact pillars. And with that, I'm now going to pass the mic over to Dee Dee, and she is going to talk about our Farmer Success Sharing Program.
Hey, Nicole, maybe you can turn the video on. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Technical difficulty. Hi, everybody. I'm Dee Dee Berlin. I'm a board member and a chair of our governance committee. I'm excited to share with you a new proposal that we intend to launch by year end in 2025. Chris referred to it a little earlier. While we're still working out the exact details of the program, the board believes our new Farmer Success Sharing Program is a transformative method of supporting our farmers. It will be truly differentiating for Iroquois Valley. We know of no other farmland investment companies with a comparable program. When you invested in Iroquois Valley, you invested in a public benefit company whose stated intent is to operate in a responsible and sustainable manner. Our being a public benefit corporation is central to every decision we make. Our farmers steward the land we own. Through their investment of time, expertise, heart, and soul, they increase the productive value of our farmland. They are the key component in our vision of improving the health of people, communities, and our planet. Given our REIT structure, our farmers fund the majority of our operations through their annual lease and mortgage interest payments. We've always been a farmer-forward company. And as we've grown in size and maturity, we believe it is appropriate for us to share our financial success with our farmers. Their long-tenured stewardship of our farm assets should be rewarded with long-term financial upside. We will use our shareholder-approved 2023 Equity Incentive Plan to award REIT shares to qualifying farmers. Awards will be based on factors such as the duration of their relationship with Iroquois Valley, the value of the land they steward, and their good standing with the company. Next slide, please. To protect our investors' interests, we've established annual company thresholds that must be met before farmer equity shares can be granted. We intend these equity grants to be a meaningful source of capital for our farmers, and we're targeting a $300,000 to $500,000 range in total grants in 2025. We hope to provide a range of $15,000 to $30,000 per farmer. We believe that by launching the new Farmer Success Sharing Initiative, we demonstrate our dedication to our farmer partners, without whom none of what we do would be possible. Thanks for your time, and I'm going to turn it over to Donna now for our Q&A session.
Thank you, Dee Dee. It's my favorite time for your questions, and I'm going to take these in the order that I received them. So Anna, I'm going to start with you. What are your sources of grant funding? Is it the USDA?
Sure, you bet. Yeah, we have an organic market research development grant from ARS, which is a USDA agency, value added producer grant from rural development. We have a conservation stewardship program grant from and an equip grant, both from NRCS. And then we were the only farm in the state of Montana to receive a FLSP, Farm Labor Stabilization Grant from FSA.
Thank you, Anna. And Chris, you're next. Why such a heavy focus on follow-on investments with current farmers when there's such a large pipeline of new farmers seeking land?
That's a great question. The $45 million pipeline number that I referenced, it's actually a mix of both new farmers as well as existing farmers bringing us new transactions. So I don't have the current breakdown in front of me, but think about those being a mix of repeat investments with farmers looking to grow their operations, as well as new farmers coming to us for the first time.
And Chris, don't go away, because this one is a related question. When you mentioned pipeline, it's not defined. Is it interested farmers? Is it deals that have undergone diligence, or is it deals that are ready for underwrite?
Yeah, I can walk through the pipeline definitions for everyone and how we think about it. So the first kind of step in the pipeline is intake, where a farmer has begun initial conversations with our farmer relations team. Some farmers maybe have longer needs, kind of 6 months or longer, or others we may have an existing relationship and there's a piece of ground that comes for sale, and there's a need to act in less than 6 months' time.
a good rule of thumb that we've seen historically is that we expect to close about 50% of those deals that kind of come through the intake stage. Once they progress past intake, they go through underwriting. Farmers have had in-depth conversations with our farmer relations team, and we believe internally that the farmer is a good fit for our portfolio. A property is typically identified at this stage, but not always. We request financial and tax documents, farm plan, and kind of business operations due diligence is all requested. Once all the documents that we request are received, a formal kind of underwriting process begins. And the goal, should the farmer pass underwriting, is to seek investment committee approval. If you make it that far, I would say generally about 80% of the investments that start the underwriting process ultimately get approved.
Great.
And
Thank you,
then,
Chris.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. And then last piece, Donna, is just kind of, there's a definition called committed. And here is, this is just simply where the property may be under contract, but we typically need to resolve some issues before closing. So typically 100% of those deals do close.
Thank you. And this one's for both you and Anna. I'll start with you, Chris. How is Iroquois Valley determining the regions to focus on?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have a very diverse portfolio, kind of spanning 20 states. Obviously, the kind of origin story of the company is in Iroquois Valley and kind of in Illinois and in Indiana, kind of around the fresh coast, as Dr. Rivard and Dave Miller used to call it. And so we have a high concentration of organic farmers in that area, and that is kind of, I would say, kind of fertile hunting grounds for us to kind of build our hub strategy. And as we can demonstrate the successful deployment of this hub strategy, we can begin to look at other regions of the country where we have developed very strong kind of relationships with leading farmers, just like Anna and Doug and the Manuels in Montana. But Anna, I'll pass it to you if you want to share some perspective.
Sure. I guess I'd just add on, Chris, I'm pretty excited about our hub strategy because there's been research done that shows when you have a group of organic enterprises together, they share equipment, they share learning, and it actually raises the entire economic capacity of the counties that they live in. I think there was the research is called organic hotspots, hotspots, if any of you want to look it up. But so it's not that we're limiting ourselves to only investing where we have existing farmers. We want good farmers, no matter where they sit, to come to us. Of course, then we also have to operate within some of the guidelines. Some states have corporate farming laws and policies where we can't necessarily own land in those locations. But I think, yeah, I guess I'll just stop there. The hub strategy is something else that our FISC committee is going to be looking into, because we know Iroquois Valley, at our core, we're a farmland investment company, we're a REIT, and we need partners and collaborations with all these other entities that are working on behalf of good farming practices with us. And so our hub strategy is going to allow us to build out more strategic partnerships, place-based ways.
Great.
Back to you, Donna.
Thank you both. And Anna, I'm coming back to you. What is the thinking about farmers selling to local customers and farmers focus on selling to more distant markets, with the assumption that it's much easier to sell to local customers if you're in a higher density area?
Yeah, great question. And I guess I will just use maybe our own experience here to talk about that. At least as diverse as our crop rotation is here at Vilicus, we also seek a diversity of income streams. And I think many of our farms in our portfolio are also doing that. So here at Vilicus, we're selling direct to distilleries in Montana. We're selling to several other small grain mill in Montana, but we're also selling pea protein that's going into a company based in Iowa. And a lot of our wheat goes to a company in Canada. So I don't think that there's a one solution, either local or direct. And I think we also have to explore where the land is located. There's a lot of land here in Montana as an example, and we could grow a lot of wheat to feed the whole state. And so some of us may be exports, and other states might be imports. So I'm not sure if that got to the question, but I think that's part of the beauty of Iroquois Valley is we have a diversity of markets that we can all work with across our portfolio.
Thanks, Anna. And Chris, what actions does the company plan to take to reduce the interest expense? Specifically, do you anticipate needing to continue to draw on the line of credit throughout 2025?
Yeah, we don't anticipate needing to continue to draw on the line of credit in 2025. Really, 4 sources of capital. We can raise new capital in the form of our impact investment notes, and new equity. That's one way. The notes certainly enable us to swap more expensive debt on our line of credit with impact investment notes. Operations is another source of funds to pay down the line of credit. And then the last area is around portfolio activity. And this is relatively infrequent, but this year we did close on a sale of one piece of farmland in Ohio, where the organic farmer was no longer able to farm that piece of ground, and we weren't able to find a replacement tenant, and so we did have to sell that farm via auction. Those are infrequent, but other sources of capital for us to pay down our line of credit.
Great, thanks, Chris. And I think this one is also for you. Can you provide more details on portfolio quality and how 2024 performed relative to prior years?
Yeah, it's a good question. Most years we typically have what we would call workouts in the portfolio and farmers undergoing challenging times. We pride ourselves on being a kind of farmer first, farmer focused company in terms of how we engage and support farmers. I can get whomever ask that question some more specific details around overall kind of portfolio quality. I don't have it in front of me, but we kind of rate all of our outstanding debt and our leases by performing, at risk, and in default. And so I can get those numbers to folks who may have asked that question.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to take this next one. It's a question about our rooted in regeneration notes. How much have we raised and how much have you deployed? And who are the new farmers supported by these notes? We have sold about $6.5 million of rooted in regeneration notes, and all of that has been deployed. We are supporting 4 farmers, one in New York, one in Illinois, one in Washington State, and the 4th one I believe is also Illinois or Indiana, I'm not sure. So 4 farmers supported. We support farmers for 10 years and they receive a 2% reduction in the interest rate on their mortgage. So it's a nice benefit, very much appreciated by our farmers. And good question. And I think I could take this next one too. This is about the state of Iowa and how come we don't have portfolio investments there. The quick answer is Iowa is a non-corporate ownership state, meaning that corporations can't buy farmland. We could do a mortgage there, but obviously less opportunities with high land prices. Okay. And Chris, I'm coming back to you. This is a great question. what adjustments were made to your new NAV policy, and what were the reasons for the small dip in the stock price?
Yeah, that's a great question. Over the course of the last year, the board wanted to take a look at the valuation policy that had been in place since inception of when it became a real estate investment trust back in 2016. So we went through the process of engaging with our auditors, some third-party kind of valuation experts to understand what the best practices look like in the marketplace for kind of valuation of real estate assets. And then on January 22nd, 2025, the board approved the new valuation policy. And that's what was applied for the 12/31/24 valuation cycle. And there's kind of, in the valuation memo we posted, there's kind of three key aspects to that change in valuation. The first is the fair value of our assets. This is the largest component of our NAV calculation, and that's largely driven by how we appraise farmland. That's pretty typical of how we were doing it in the past, third-party appraisals plus desktop appraisals. The only change that we did make is, rather than applying kind of a blanket 5% premium to our certified organic farms, we took a farm by farm approach and looked at each farm individually to then apply kind of a range of organic premium kind of based on tenure of organic certification. The other change was around the fair value of our liabilities. These are our impact notes and our mortgages. Best practice is to kind of look at those and compare those to kind of current market rates and make adjustments accordingly. So we fair value both our assets and our liabilities. And then the last aspect of the valuation policy was eliminating our operating company premium. And that's something that kind of upon advice from some of the specialists we talked to, we incorporated that into our new valuation policy.
Great, thank you. Dee Dee, I have a question for you. Is there a vesting schedule for farmers for the equity grants?
Yeah, we anticipate that the farmer equity grants will be treated the same as any other investor who purchases our shares. There's a 5-year holding period before redemption is possible. So really the intent is that the farmers will, pardon the pun, be growing with us in terms of our ideally enhanced share prices over time.
Great, thank you. And now you will take the next one. It's reinvestment in farmers is above 60% of your portfolio. What are your policies on loans to any one farmer? Limits on the amount any farmer can have at a given time based on their financials and the percentage of Iroquois Valley's portfolio. So there's a couple answers to that. It really depends a bit on the farmer. Our investment guidelines are no more than 15% of total portfolio assets can be invested in first generation farmer. Any single investment can't be over 3% of the total portfolio assets in a new farming relationship. And that means new to us, not a new person to farming. And any single investment over 5% of our total portfolio assets in an existing farmer. So that's the largest guideline. I guess this one is, I guess for me, how do you go about finding new investors? That's a good question, and we use a lot of different sources. And some of it is referrals from other investors, quite a bit. Some investors will just do a Google search because they want to invest in organic farmland, and Iroquois Valley pops up. We do some outreach. We meet people at conferences. If we're traveling, we try and meet new investors. So we spend a fair amount of time reaching out and trying to find investors. And I would say about the other half comes to us. So good question. Next question is also investor related. If an investor dies, is the 5-year holding requirement waived? Generally, what happens if an investor dies, the investment goes to their heirs, and if the investor has been with us for 5 years, the holding period is tacked on. So the holding period would be satisfied if the deceased had been invested for 5 years. And I think we might be getting to the end of the questions. There's one here, and I think this is a question. It says, are you seeing any early indications of tailwinds from the MAHA movement? I'm wondering if that's maybe the MAGA movement. But that, I'm not sure because of tailwinds.
That was, Donna, just for what it's worth, that's Make America Healthy Again. That's our.
Ah, yes. Thank you, Dee Dee. Chris, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm curious on Anna's perspective of this as well, but I think the answer is no tailwinds yet, just more headwinds from probably from the current administration. We'll have to see if any of those policies and claims that RFK Jr. made before he took over the Health and Human Services. We'll see if those come to fruition. But Anna, maybe you'd like to comment.
Yeah, I think Chris, same as you. I think it remains to be seen. I'm on a USDA mailing list, so I know that after the first week of Brooke Rawlings, our new USDA secretary, there was a whole list of things that Brooke did in her first week of service, and one of those I think was actually to have lunch with Robert Kennedy. So I think it remains to be seen what actually translates out. But yeah, there are some very interesting forces on both sides of the MAHA debate.
I think it just speaks to the kind of uncertainty all around facing farmers right now, but certainly could be an upside surprise.
Thank you.
You know, I just would add to one other level of uncertainty as well around all this is that the elimination and reduction of anything related to climate has been happening inside USDA and across other federal agencies as well. So I think, you know, organic is definitely a climate solution, and that could be like another implication about how do we all talk about organic, because organic is a climate solution, but it also takes care of our planet. It keeps us healthy. It feeds us good food. It's economically better for farmers. So I think just use the talking points that make sense at the time and the audience that you're working with, because that's the magic. That's the magic of organic. It's not just one thing.
Thanks, Anna. This is a great question. It's about what is the most common question asked by prospective investors? And I would say there's two at the top of one. Almost every investor asks if we have a farm in the state that they're calling from. So if they're in New York, they want to know if we have farmland in New York. And the second question is, what's the difference between organic and regenerative? Regenerative has become a much more popular term in the last 10 years. When Iroquois Valley was started, it really wasn't used at all. But organic is a very specific statutory standard. There are certain qualifications that every farmer has to meet to be certified. One of them being that they can't use pesticides for 3 years. Regenerative, there isn't one consistent standard. It is a different thing to many different people. And we always believe that if we are taking investors' money, we want to make sure that our farmers are certified organic and investors are getting what they expect.
Hey, Donna, I could quick add to that if anyone's
Sure,
interested.
please.
Just to do a quick Google search on Organic Farming Research Foundation, and they have a very nice write-up about organic is regenerative.
Very good point. Chris, this is similar to a question you answered before, but a little bit different. If the increase in interest expense was primarily a result of additional farmland deals, and we would like to continue to be aggressive in these deals, how would you expect interest expense to be lower in 2025?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are moderating our kind of acquisition pace to better match capital raised, and typically the first 4 or 5 months of the year are the buying season, and so we're wrapping up the buying season, and the back half of the year tends to be a lot more fruitful from a fundraising perspective. And so I think we'll see the line of credit and the level of debt come down, and therefore our interest expense will begin to trend down as well.
Thank you. And one more question here. I think we have time for one more. How does rising interest rates and inflation impact your cost of capital and asset valuations? Chris, you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword when you think about it, because higher inflation tends to be generally supportive of real assets and commodities and farmland. So generally farmland, and certainly organic certified farmland, could be a good hedge against higher inflation. Higher inflation often and can come with higher interest rates, and therefore may impact the cost of financing for both Iroquois Valley and for our farmers who are seeking financing in the broader capital markets as well. So it can be a headwind for kind of obtaining capital.
Thank you. A couple more here. What challenges or opportunities exist in deploying agrivoltaics, dual use solar and agriculture across your properties? Anna or Chris?
Do you want to take that, Anna? I think you just put some on your farm.
Oh, well, we did. It was actually at one of our housing locations, one of the farms that Iroquois Valley owns. So it was through a REAP grant, which we got through rural development. But I think it also depends on the scale and size. So there's smaller solar systems, which I think can be applied across to help with facility electric costs. But then, Chris, I think we're also been in conversations with some larger companies that are interested in actually investing in solar panels and solar systems across our farm at a larger scale. And those tend to be closer to where main power line sources are. So
yeah, we've had some conversations around community solar projects, which are, I think, typically capped out at about 5 megawatts and take anywhere between 25 and 30 acres. But the limiting factor really tends to be geography and how close are you to substations and other grid infrastructure.
And I'd say, just as a fun exploration, like, part of my dream would be, wouldn't it be awesome if we could have all of our farms off fossil fuels? And so step one would be, could we actually make some agreements with some like, well, say Ford, so that every farm that has a pickup truck has an electric Ford 150. And I mean, that's something that Doug and I just leased this year, so it's going to be a big experiment to see how well the electric truck holds up. But say doing that ties into, like, if we have solar systems at farms, then we can be continuing to reduce our fossil fuel on the farm as a whole, because organic as a system is very fossil fuel free and climate friendly.
Thank you, Anna. And I think this is also for you, Anna. What contingency plans are in place if tenants struggle due to economic downturns or extreme weather events?
Oh, that is a very good question and something that is top of mind and part of the impetus for Farmer Impact and Sustainability Committee, because the sustainability part of that committee name is really about sustainability of our farmers. We understand that there are tremendous variable forces at play on all of our farmers, and every farm is a unique organism. So we're investing in our farmer relations team because when a farmer comes into our portfolio, we never want that farmer to leave. Our investment is in the land and farmer forward focused. So part of that is building a relationship, because our farmers have relationships with the land. We must have relationships with our farmers and have a deep enough relationship that it's not just transactional. So farmers that are having challenges can actually come talk to us, explore with us how we adjust or adapt the agreements that we have with each other so that we can maintain the organic land management. Chris, feel free to add on to that.
I have nothing to add, Anna. No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's about all the time we have and all the questions we have. So thank you very much. We appreciate all your questions. If you need anything that you maybe forgot to ask, please reach out to Nicole or I, and we're happy to get back to you. And Chris, I think I turn it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Donna. And I'd like to thank all of the shareholders for all of the great questions. If you have additional follow-up questions, like Donna said, please reach out to Donna and Nicole. It's the questions and the feedback that we get from investors and from farmers that continue to make us better and stronger as an organization. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Maybe Nora, can you go to the last slide? So in 2010, I think it was like year 3 into Iroquois Valley's existence, President Obama said in a speech that we all have a right to be impatient about change. And I feel that statement applies to our work. We all want to see change in conventional agricultural practices and positive change in the quality of the food we eat, the quality of food we feed our kids, and the quality of our soil. We all want to transform agriculture. And this kind of change requires patient capital. It also requires farmers, ranchers, and food producers who are dedicated to organic practices. From Iroquois Valley's perspective, it requires a dedicated team of individuals working hard to achieve that change. So I just want to close by thanking our shareholders and all of our stakeholders for their investment and their commitment to Iroquois Valley and their commitment to transforming agriculture through organic land stewardship. Thank you.